Hello everyone, Xeno What If here. To bring in part 5 of What If the Reds and Blues were part of Overwatch. Link down in the description of the fan fiction of this, What If. Listen here YouTube. I do not own anything and this isn't a scam. Chapter 9. Wanted, Dead or Alive. Secret Talon Base, but we found it. Sombra, Widowmaker and Tex were both standing around waiting for a few new members that Reaper recruited. As well as wait for the other team that Sombra had recommended. Suddenly an African American man walked into the room with Reaper behind him. He wore a white t-shirt and was built like a tank. His right arm was covered with a black cloth wrapped on his shoulder. "Where is my hero's welcome?" he asked as he walked in with his arms open. Widowmaker smiled. "Akand, you haven't changed a bit," she said. Reaper was followed by a woman who was skinny and pale. "Well, it feels good to be back here. How do you feel, Reyes?" she asked. Reyes or Reaper grunted. "It's Reaper," he said. But the former group members were cut short as a new face entered the room, fiddling with a knife in his hands. He smiled as he walked forward. "Well, I honestly didn't think I would meet new people for this gig. After all, I work alone nowadays," he said. Sombra smiled. "Felix, I see the file was true, but remember, $1 billion for every Overwatch member's head," she said. Another voice entered. Well, I guess I might actually retire early if that's how much you're paying," the man known as Wyoming said. Tex saw him. "Wyoming?" She nodded. Wyoming saw her. "Ah, Tex, how's that psychotic boyfriend of yours? What was his name? Chapel? No, Church, wasn't it?" he asked. Sombra was looking up the name to find out all his secrets, however came up with nothing. "Well, can anyone tell me who is he?" she asked. Wyoming smiled. "Gladly, Church's agent Texas's boyfriend. Am I correct?" he asked. Tex flipped him off. Sombra got a picture. "Oh, apparently Overwatch just recruited as one of their main members," she said. Suddenly heavy thudding was entering the room as the last member showed up. "Low growl," he said. As the meta had finally entered and drew closer to the screen with Church's face on it. He looked back to Texas and grunted again, this time much deeper. "Reaper went back to Texas, wasn't he at that Arctic base that we attacked?" he asked. Tex nodded. "Reaper went to Sombra's keypad and typed in something." Immediately the screen flashed with all the faces of the Reds and Blues, including Church. At the bottom the words, "Wanted Dead or Alive" were found. He looked at the screen. "This won't be a problem, will it?" he asked. Tex laughed. "Good luck, those motherfuckers are unkillable, they're like cockroaches," she said. Reaper looked at the picture of Church. "Actually, keep this man alive. Overwatch doesn't have any information on him, let's find out why," he said. Felix saw Tucker's face. "Actually, if you don't mind, I'd like to kill him myself, just good old-fashioned revenge," he said. Reaper nodded knowing that feeling, and just like that, the Reds and Blues are now the most wanted bastards ever. Watch Point Base, Gibraltar. The entire team was called because Winston had pressing matters to tell them, all of them. He was surrounded by the members of Overwatch to his left and the Reds and Blues to his right. He cleared his throat. "I suppose you all are wondering why I called all of you here today," he said. Everyone looked around at each other and nodded. Winston typed in his computer, "Talon has gained more forces since our last encounter," he said. He pulled up multiple images of different faces. Reaper, who wore a black hoodie and a white mask, was shown first. Followed by Widowmaker. Tucker saw her and became interested. "Who's that?" he asked, trying his hardest to seem professional. "One of Talon's deadliest assets. Widowmaker," Winston said as he continued to go through the names. Sombra, a young hacker who looked like a teenager but was much older than one. Genji and Tracer jumped at the next one. Doomfist. They said in unison. "We got lucky when we took him on. Do you think that we actually can do that twice?" Tracer asked. Winston shook his head. "I'm not sure, Lena. I'm not sure," he said. Soldier 76 scowled at the next. "No need for introducing this one. Moira, the most insane witch doctor in history. She throws morals aside and uses her knowledge in twisted ways," he said. "The next one's made the Reds and Blues go pale. We know him," Tucker said as he walked to the picture. "Felix, one of the best assassins ever. We faced him and it took all of us. My blade wasn't strong enough to face him," he said. The next one got Sarge to stand up. Agent Wyoming, sharpshooter, trickster, and all-around bastard. I thought we blasted his ass a while ago. He said. Griff stood up at the next one as well. Meta, once a powerful freelancer, now a crazed maniac with a thirst for power. He said, he killed. He stopped when he saw Church stand up. She's not dead. Church said as the next picture revealed. Her face, Tex, my gift from the heaven. He said. Soldier 76 walked towards the Reds and Blues to confront them. You know all these people. So now we can figure out their weaknesses and take them due, he was about to say until Church started to leave. Church turned around. No, I'm not doing it. He said. Soldier 76 looked at Church. What did you say? He asked. Church shook his head. I'm not going to tell you anything about her. He said. Soldier grew angry under his mask. What? You can't be serious, because you had a flame with her. She's the enemy and she'd shoot you before you even had the chance to get close. He said. Church shook his head again. You don't know Tex like me. He said. Soldier 76 grabbed Church by the collar. Listen to me, the next time you see her will be your last, trust me on that. He said before Church pushed him away. Church looked him dead in the eye. Listen to me, shithead. You don't know who Tex is, so keep her name out of your mouth and we'll leave each other be. He said. Tracer alongside many of the other young, or youngish members of Overwatch watched as Church left the room. Church went to his room followed by Eyes and his brothers in arms. Later still in Gibraltar, Church laid on his mattress as he watched the ceiling wondering if Tex would actually attack him. He's been heartbroken after the day he thought she died at the hands of the Meta. Church still loved and missed her with all his heart, but wondered if she loved him the same. Church laid down in his thoughts until he heard a knocking on his door. He walked over to it and opened it slightly to see the face of the poster girl herself, Lena. He cocked his head. Lena, what do you want? He asked. She sighed. Well, the thing is about Tex, we were wondering. Tracer was stopped short. For fuck's sake, I'm not telling you guys about her weaknesses, so just leave me. Church started until Tracer started to explain more. Tracer got back on track. No, it's not that, we were actually wondering how you guys first met. She asked. Church looked confused again. We. He asked. We. The familiar voice of Lucio answered. Church looked outside the door to see Mercy, May, Lucio, DVA, Bridget, Genji, and Farah. Church scratched the back of his head as he came out. Well, okay, I guess. He said. Tucker poked his head out of his room next door. What's going on? He asked. May turned to answer him. Church is telling us the story how he and Tex first met. She answered. Tucker chuckled. Ah, this story. Hey Caboose, Church is telling your favorite story again. Tucker called out. Caboose poked his head out. Really? Oh, I love story time. He said as he ran out and sat crossed-legged at his feet. Church leaned against the wall. Well, I suppose this isn't your usual love story. He started. Tracer raised her hand. Where'd you guys meet? A cafe. A mission. Ooh, were you childhood friends? She asked. Church started his trip down memory lane. No, some bar down in Texas, the kind no one asks for your ID. So I was there after I just went on a mission. Someone took our team's intel from us. I was just not in a good mood that night. He said as he remembered the night perfectly. He was sitting at one of the stools of the bar drinking a beer labeled Man Company. Bud. That night he wore a Hawaiian button-up shirt and had his head resting against his hand. Church continued his story. Then out of the corner of my eye I saw a woman getting harassed by a few guys from a different squad. I went to get up and help, but what happened next was truly spectacular. She unleashed the most amazing display of violence and beauty I've ever seen. He said as he took another trip down memory lane. He remembered Tex wore her hair in a ponytail with part of her hair covering the front of her face. She had on her black jeans and wore a black tank top, with a heavy ammo belt and her dog tags dangling over her neck. He remembered when that punk grabbed her behind, she turned around and socked him across the face. After that she grabbed a guy's arm between her legs and snapped his arm as she stomped his face in. One of the pricks in the bar got lucky and head-butted her into a pool table. After that she grabbed a beer bottle and bashed it against his head and used the broken part to stab him in his armpit. She went back to the punk that grabbed her ass, who happened to fall next to Church and his beer. Tex walked to Church and took a sip of his beer bottle before smashing it against the punk's head, and stabbing him with the remaining part of the bottom in the neck. When she was finished, she looked up at Church as his hand began to move closer to her face. He put up 2 fingers signaling to the bartender to bring 2 more his way. Back to reality where everyone was still looking at Church. When she severed that dude's main artery with that broken beer bottle, I knew she was the one. We drank, talked, and laughed until the sun came up. He said as he finished his story. All the listeners except looked at Church in a confused way. Genji raised his hand. You were attracted to her by her violence. Do you have a fetish or something? He asked. Church scratched the back of his neck. I guess you can call it that. He said. Lucio raised his hand. Want to talk about it? He asked. Church looked away. No. He replied. Caboose started to ask, want to talk about WI? He stopped when Church turned back around. No. Church replied as he went back in his room to shut the door. Tucker looked at the large group. It's best to leave him alone for now. He tends to be like this. He said as he went back in his room and heard them disperse. Somewhere in Australia, 2 junkers were gaining their loot together. I dunno Rhodey, I feel as though it needs something more natural. He said. Roadhog walked over to his smaller partner and handed him a flyer. Roadhog grunted through his mask, like this. He asked. The flyer showed a high price, $2 billion if the person was dead, $4 billion if the person was alive. The picture revealed the man's face and name, Leonard L. Church. Junkrat jumped up with glee and got all giddy. Oi, Hog, we just got our payday for the Queen's gift. He laughed maniacally. Chapter 11. The Secret Meet-Up. After Watch Point Gibraltar. Church along with many of the Reds and Blues have finally received their days off. After about a few weeks, Winston had believed that they would earn the trust of the United Nations, soon. But until then they were given a ride any 2 weeks off. They all decided to go to the same place, somewhere in England where Church was looking to buy something at the mall. They all went into a store called Gay Ben's Paradise. Apparently that was a place where there was a low price on everything, cause there was always a sale. This fanfiction is sponsored by Valve. Just kidding, not sponsored at all unless Valve wishes to throw some money my. No. They looked at all the outfits and grabbed ones that best matched their personalities and skills. Sarge was a red soldier, Griff was an orange demoman, Simmons was a maroon engineer, Lopez was a brown spy, Donut was a pink pyro, Caboose was a blue heavy, Tucker was a sky blue scout, Doc was a purple medic, and Church was a cobalt sniper. They all also checked out more and more clothes for possible Halloween parties or summertime, or any random holiday. They also went to the arcade to actually learn some different emotes they could use from a DDR machine. Caboose was able to learn how to do the dance from Remember the Titans, Sarge learned how to spin his gun in a military fashion, and Griff was able to learn how to do a drunken conga. Tucker actually learned how to dance like Jason Derulo from the Swalla music video, Simmons learned how to by watching Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1 over and over again, and Griff learned how to do a traditional Polynesian fire dance. Donut learned one of the choreography moves from Bring It On. Doc learned how to dance from listening to Staying Alive by the Bee Gees. Church simply doesn't dance, but he does play his guitar like Santana. They all had a laugh after they went to a bar to talk about what happened to them after chorus. How Church was found by Wash after Wash found Church laying with broken pieces of Hargrove's ship after they washed ashore. Washington placed him in a hospital under Wash's supervision, and was on watch over him. Wash explained to Church how the entire had died in a plane crash as the ship went down. Then came the Reds and Blues' turn to tell their side of the story. How Wash found them after they landed from escaping from the blast of the ship. How he had them moved back to Earth back and forth to cities to try to keep them apart. How he had to enforce them not to reassemble the team back together. Both of those stories has had one major liar in them, the bastard who stripped their family apart. They were finally reunited and nothing could take that away from them. Hours later after a trip to a bar and many drinks later. Church had only had about 2 drinks, same as Tucker had, because someone had to call them Uber drivers. Each of them had a varied number of drinks that got them to a tipsy level. Sarge has around 6 beers, Donut had 3 glasses of wine, Griff had an entire case of Corona, Simmons and Doc couldn't finish their first mug of beer. Lopez had super unleaded motor oil that he drunk from a jerry can. And Church made sure that he packed juice boxes for Caboose, as childish as it was. He still wanted to preserve his innocence. The last ones left were Caboose, Tucker and Church, who were actually planning on walking, were outside enjoying the icy cool breeze of England. Tucker began the conversation. "You know, I kinda like this," he said. Church questioned Tucker. "Like what?" "Walking," he asked. Tucker shook his head. "No, I mean the fact that we're a team again," he said. Church looked down at Tucker. "Yeah, I missed the biggest pains in my ass as well." Church joked as Tucker socked him in the arm. Tucker made a fake frown. "Up yours, man," he said as they both begun to laugh until Church stopped in the middle of the sidewalk. Tucker grew curious. "Church, you alright?" he asked. "Yeah, Tucker, I'm fine, guess it was nothing," Church said, but what people didn't realize is Church and Tucker made a secret way to respond to one another. Tucker came up with it as a way to pick up chicks, but Tucker saw Church's eyebrows and eyes move in a fashion he remembered. What Church really meant was, "Tucker, building across the street behind my left shoulder has a sniper on the roof, and alleyway on my right has someone hiding there." He meant. Tucker agreed with Church. "Yeah man, guess it was nothing to worry about," he said, but what he actually meant was, "I see the sniper, what's the plan?" he asked with his looks. Church responded back to Tucker, "Well, you and Caboose should get the car, I think we'll be okay." Don't actually do this folks, but what Church really said was, "Go around the corner and scale the wall, I'll hang back and go for the alleyway," he said. Tucker nodded and walked with Caboose around the building where the sniper couldn't see them. Church was leaning up against the wall as he pulled out his lighter and grabbed something else from his pocket. The assailants had no idea who they were messing with, unfortunately neither did the boys. On the roof, the person who watched the boys from up above saw how the tall, strong, blonde and the dark, slim, handsome one split from the group. Which left one of the main targets behind, the one who was trying to light something. The sniper spoke into her earpiece. "Two just split off from main target. He is in the open, let me know when to fire," she said. The one on the other end spoke up. "Alright, before those other two get back, aim for his neck." "Anything out of the ordinary?" she asked. The sniper looked closely at the target and saw nothing that would pique her interest, nothing unusual, he just stopped to have a smoke, she answered. The person on the other end spoke. "Wait, you said he stopped for a smoke?" she asked. The sniper, "Key. Why?" she asked. The person on the ground took a while to respond to her question. "I think they know, pull out now," she said. The sniper looked back through the scope as she saw the target holding nothing in his mouth, nothing. However, he did hold something else in his hand, the middle finger. Just as she was about to fire a shot, a voice spoke up from behind her. "Hey, what you looking at?" the voice said. The sniper turned to the owner of the voice to see none other than the swordsman from before. She aimed her gun at her and fired multiple rounds at Tucker, which he had deflected using both of his swords. He lowered his swords as he finally got a good look at this purple-skinned beauty, not a usual skin tone, but Tucker didn't judge. He placed one sword behind his back. "Listen, we can do this all night, but you have to learn I'm not gonna hit a lady," he said. The sniper, now recognized as Widowmaker, smiled. "Good, because I don't plan to hit you, I plan to shoot you," she said as she shot one sniper bullet. Tucker swung his left sword upward, slicing the bullet in two as the pieces they went around him. He then tossed his right sword directly at her as it stabbed straight through her gun. Tucker then smiled again. "So how we cool?" he asked. Widowmaker was about to turn around and make her escape, however met many dark figures. She looked around and found herself surrounded by assassins covered in black cloaks. She smiled for a moment. "Well, I guess this is au revoir," she said as she was about to leave until the assassins blocked her path. Tucker smiled. "Friends of yours?" he asked. He then pulled out his handgun and held it up. "Hey, you a good shot?" he asked. Widowmaker looked at the gun. "How do you know I won't shoot you in the back when this is done?" she asked with a grin. Tucker held his sword with both his hands. "Well, I guess I have no choice but to trust you," he said. Widowmaker looked at the gun as she held it tightly and stood back to back with one of the men she was assigned to kill. With the assassin on the ground, she knew that the plan was currently going down south at an incredible speed. She began to book it down a series of alleyways to avoid churches she knew he would follow. Doing hardcore jumps that would leave most men speechless and leaping over objects like nothing. What she didn't know is this man knew her too well. As she looked back she didn't see him coming after her, so she turned around and began to lockpick the door. She opened the door and walked through as she was charged and pinned up against the wall with a hand on her throat and another one on her right arm. She then began to use her left arm to punch her attacker. Her attacker backed up as he looked around and smashed a red rectangular box with a fire axe in it. He broke through the glass with his elbow and pulled the wooden handle on the axe through. The woman reached for her thigh and pulled out a combat knife and held it with the blade facing out. They both stood staring at each other for a moment, not one moving closer than the other. The man with the axe threw it to the ground, then removed his mask, which was simply a light blue bandana. It was none other than her main target. "Church, so, you gonna run again?" he asked. The assassin removed her helmet as her red and black hair bounced to her shoulders. "Well, I don't have much of a choice now, do I?" Tex asked. Church tried to think of something to break the icy tension in the air. "So, how's your new job?" he asked as if it was a casual conversation. Tex knew what Church was trying. "Well, you know, pays pretty well, travels a lot, coworkers suck, but you know, free medical and dental," she said, following his lead. Church nodded along. Not bad. Does your job give vacation days and provide catering?" he asked again. Tex smiled a little with one side of her mouth. "Yep, even get to keep some souvenirs," she said. Church looked surprised with a smile. "Shit, are they accepting applications?" Church asked as a joke. Tex still laughed as though it was just a regular day with him. She then looked at his wound. "How you healing up?" Tex asked. Church looked down at his scar. I've been through worse," he said. Tex of all people knew this to be true. Tex shot him a look. "Don't try to act tough. I know you've been through worse, but don't act like that nothing is wrong," she said. Church sighed. "Tex, I can't say that this is shocking to me because I felt like you would do this," he began. Tex knew where he was going. "No, Church, stop right there," she demanded. But Church continued. "Well, I know that this is what you do this because you leave when things get too difficult," he said as he knew what came next. Tex launched forward and punched him across the face and sent him stumbling back into the wall behind him. Church held his jaw for a moment. "Don't say that again," Tex ordered. Church looked her in the face. "Then prove me wrong," he said as he balled up his fist and prepared for a fight. Tex positioned her feet the way she always did before she got into a fight. Church saw this and cracked his fingers with his thumb, each one with its own crick. They both stared each other down, waiting for one of them to make the first move. Until something broke a window in the warehouse they were in and startled them from their hostile faces. Church looked around and backed up into something slightly smaller than him. Tex did the same, except she bumped into something slightly larger than her. They both turned around to see each other as they both turned back around to see thugs armed with melee weapons surrounding them. Church held his axe tight as Tex held her knife tightly to her body. Church looked down at Tex as she looked at him. One look and they had the same idea. Church asked the office, "You take the ones on the left and I'll take the ones on the right," he asked. Tex smiled. "Now you're talking," she responded. One massive ass kicking that's still too violent to type. Tucker and Widowmaker were done disposing of the wannabe ninjas that had attacked them. Both were pretty tired as they were panting from exhaustion and were out of most of their energy. Widowmaker looked at Tucker and raised his pistol at his face. "I guess this is where we part," she said. Tucker smiled. "Well, parting is such sweet sorrow. Are you sure you don't want to have fun?" he asked. Widowmaker smiled back. "Maybe if you live, we'll see," she responded. Tucker smiled. "If I live, you said. Better keep that promise," he said. Widowmaker pulled the trigger and heard a click go off as she looked at an empty gun. Tucker shrugged his shoulders. "This counts, right?" he asked. Widowmaker removed her helmet as she grabbed Tucker's shirt and kissed him on the lips. After the brief kiss she tossed him the helmet. "Farewell, for now," she said as she zip-lined away. Tucker heard a beeping noise come from the helmet as he flipped it over to look what was in it. Apparently the widow left him a surprise in the form of a purple poison gas bomb. As he coughed out of the smoke he looked to where she last went. "Ah, ma petite chauffeur," Tucker said as he walked into the building to go down the stairs. Tucker communicated with Church. "Hey, Church, you there?" he asked the comm link. With Tex and Church, they were bloodied up from all the bounty hunters that had attacked them that they beat and tired. Church and Tex huffed and buffed until they looked at how messed up and bloodied they both were. Church begun to laugh as well as Tex as they saw each other. Church started the conversation again. "You look like hell," he said. Tex laughed back. "Me? You should see yourself," she said. They paused for a moment until Church's comm link started going off. The comm link spoke out. "Hey, Church, you there?" asked the familiar voice of Tucker. Church answered the call. "Couldn't have called earlier?" he asked. Tucker answered, "Why? Sorry, had to deal with assassins." "What about you?" he asked. Church responded back. "Oh, you know bounty hunters, so anyway," he started to say until Tex took the phone from him. Tex talked to Tucker. "Hey, Tuck. Got to borrow Church for tonight, that okay?" she said, hinting something only Tucker got. Tucker chuckled from his end. "Oh yeah, I know what's going to happen, bo chica bo wow," Tucker said as he hung up. Tex turned to Church as Church remembered something about Tex. "I forgot violence turns you on," he said. Tex reminded Church of something. "Turns you on too," she said. Church sighed as he and Tex walked back to her place, and placed a "Do Not Disturb" sign on the door. This is the end of part 5 of this What If. I hope you guys like it. Don't forget to leave a comment down below and subscribe to my channel.